Hi, Jess. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, our pleasure. I'm looking forward to kind of talking about your unique skill set and kind of where you're at in the health and wellness energetic space. So can't wait to dive in. What I would love to do to start is if you could share with our listeners just kind of a little bit about what you're currently doing. And I know you're probably in the middle of, a few shifts here and there. We'll get into that, but what are you kind of currently doing in the health, wellness, energy space?
Yes, I'm a holistic hairdresser. I've been a hairdresser for about 18 years, and I switched into the holistic space about 3 years ago. I also do Reiki, so I'm doing that also in my salon. I do that about once a week. And I also am working on, I have a monthly newsletter that comes out that shares my best wellness tips for people. So yeah, that's more where I'm at right now. I'm also hosting a level 1 Reiki retreat in Sedona in June. So that's all the things I'm getting ready for the first half of the year.
That's exciting. And you're an IHP, correct?
I'm IHP level 1. Yep.
That's
yeah.
great.
And I do infuse that. Obviously, that's why I'm here. I infuse that into pretty much everything I do. The holistic hairdressing, Reiki. My point of difference with my Reiki clients is that I do a little follow-up email after kind of revisiting the session and giving maybe some best practices. And usually there's that practical application of a wellness portion that I share with them as well.
Yeah, that's great. So a lot of people who are listening might already know this, and maybe if you've listened to some episodes, you do too. But when I was like first out of high school and like thinking about college, I wanted to be a hairdresser. I worked for my aunt's hair salon, and I swear people are like, "Oh, do you still want to be a hairdresser now?" And my draw to hairdressing was just like, because it was a place where everybody left feeling good. Mm-hmm. And it was just an industry that I was like, this place, everybody's always happy here. Sometimes people come in and share like sad stories, but the hairdresser was always in kind of this role of, facilitating some kind of like happiness and leaving the client feeling better than when they came in. And I loved that, but I'm doing that now. So it's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the energy behind it, because that's why, moving on to a more holistic health coaching path and being drawn to Reiki, all those things, it's just how the energy feels. So when you kind of look at that, it does make sense, like maybe at first glance, you're like, oh, that's an interesting combination. But that is what I've always excelled at. And what I've loved about my job as a hairdresser is the connection that I make. And then just really being able to transmute energy and send people off better than they found me, or better than I found them. So yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting, the connection. So I'm curious, how did you kind of go from being a hairdresser for several years and then thinking I kind of want to make this shift? What was the kind of piece that led you in the more kind of wellness Reiki direction?
Well, first of all, I have always been really intuitive and I've always followed my heart. And so I question that. I'm getting even better at it as I get older. But so it was about 12 years ago, I had my own health issues. I had alopecia areata. I had really bad eczema, tachycardia. I mean, I just had so many things going on, bouts of vertigo and nystagmus. And so my father is a retired internal medicine doctor. So I grew up in that Western medicine mindset, and I went that route and I wasn't really getting relief. And I had this intuitive sense that the eczema on my hands was like the circular pattern. I had circular bald spots, and I was just like, this is connected. Like, this has to be all connected. And I know I don't have the letters behind my name, but it all is something. I didn't even really know what root cause was at that point, but I knew intuitively something was wrong in my body. So I started doing my own research and, started eliminating like gluten and dairy and stuff with like enormous transformative results just from that, just it's like that thorn in my body I didn't know was there. So, and not I'm not sure, maybe about 5 years ago, I discovered, my very good friend Janet told me about Dr. Cabral's podcast.
Mhm.
And so then I started listening to that, and I was just like, wow, like, why don't we just know this? Why isn't this just, like out there for everyone? And I just started listening to him, doing all the things, the protocols, and my life changed so much. In fact, so many of like the mindset and things like really hit me. And I realized, I think he did one about toxic people. And the first person that jumped in my head was my ex-husband, who was not my ex at the time, so I was like, oh, uh-oh, and it just really helped me see things from a different perspective. So I was living in New Hampshire. I actually went to Dr. Cabral's Wellness Center at one point, and then just totally shifted my life, moved back to Arizona. I'm from the Southwest originally. And I knew I wanted to like work at an organic salon, because now I have all this knowledge. I felt like a fraud. Like I felt like I can't work in just a conventional salon and recommend these awful products to people. Now so you can't unknow it once you know it. So I looked around, tried a couple of places. I just wasn't really vibing with the organic salons here. So I landed at one that's like a level down from it, but I won't mention the product, but it's like a pretty big salon, but it's kind of like fake organic. Like once I got into it, it's kind of just like, oh, it's really just marketing, and I think the foundation of it wasn't, but it shifted over the years, big conglomerates buying it out and anything. But anyways, so I just really I didn't feel like I was in the right place. I was just kind of lost. And I hadn't even listened to Dr. the Cabral concept in probably like 6 months, just because I moved cross country. I had a lot going on. And I kid you not, the first time I listened to it in forever, he was talking about the Integrative Health Practitioner. Mm. And that was just starting. And I was like, this is it. Like something in me just lit up, and I knew this is my next step. So yeah. And I didn't even know where I was going. I kind of thought like, I'm just going to leave hairdressing and I'm going to be a health coach. Like that's what I had in my mind at first. And then about halfway through, this just light bulb came to me like, no, I'm going to open my own place and combine these things, and use the best products and educate people on the importance of using these products. And so that's how like my first iteration of my business started. I started about 8 months after moving here, had very like little clientele. On paper, it made no sense, right? Mm-hmm. Like I was just like, but in my heart knew like, I have to do this and it will all work out, So that's where that led me. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. I mean, you kind of think like, the timing, right? Like you step away from the podcast for 6 months because life is busy. And then the episode that you pick up on is kind of like, aha, your next, your next step. Like they kind of always say, like, just take the first step, the staircase will appear.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so cool. I love those serendipitous events. I feel like they happen so much more than probably we even pay attention to. Like that's my latest thing, is like really writing them down and paying attention, because like so many things are happening for me now. And I think it's because I'm really expanding into like my soul's mission. And so it's like more and more, it's like a snowball effect of positivity and like doors opening. So yeah.
Yes. And paying attention to them is so important, because I think like when we're so busy, when we pay attention to them, then we're able to kind of like find like the marvel and like the gratitude in them. And then that just continues to snowball. But some people just think like, oh, it's just by chance, things kind of bubble up. But when you kind of look at it as like this whole life is happening like for me, it's a complete shift in energy and
perspective. Yeah. I just read this quote that was like, coincidences are just a pseudonym for God when he doesn't want to leave his signature. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I love that. It's perfect, because there are no coincidences. It's all for leading you in a direction. Like we have to be like, a mystery sleuth solver to like pick up on these things and like, what does this mean for me? And yeah, so.
Exactly. Yeah. So along those same lines, just because I know you have your Reiki background and, we've kind of talked about that energetic exchange of like, communicating and like finding that connection with clients as a hairdresser. And so I'm curious kind of what you believe the importance of kind of incorporating both physical things that you would learn in IHP, like the water you drink, the food you eat, right?
Yeah.
Then kind of that energetic space of Reiki and kind of how somebody's choosing to show up in the world or what they're choosing to kind of have as beliefs.
Well, I'll step back for a second and just tell you how it kind of came into my life, because I think that that's really what made me realize the importance of all this and kind of the blending. So, and it's the timing again is ironic. So I had opened my business in 2019. I was really working on building it. So the coaching wasn't as, as uniform as I wanted to be. It was kind of just like giving my clients that were my hair clients tips on how to, be healthier, best practices, replacements, and all those things. And I started to work with one client, and she was really like, my first one was like super like combative and almost like, you need to prove yourself to me so that I can, and I'm like, you either want to work with me or you don't. Like, I don't need to prove myself to you. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of like, it turned me off a little bit, and I wasn't really sure how to handle it. And I just kind of put the coaching on the back burner. I mean, it's always, like I said, it fuses to everything I do, and it's how I live my life. But as far as like a one-on-one thing, I just kind of put it to the back burner. January of 2020, I went to my first Reiki circle, and I instantly felt Reiki. I felt myself being able to like channel it. And it was like something I'd always known, but didn't know. Like, it just felt like home. Mm-hmm. And so I immediately I have to do this. It was just kind of like when I found IHP, I was like, this is it. This is my next, it's like a calling. Mm-hmm. So I scheduled my Reiki level 1, and you know what happened after that, right? So as soon as everything opened back up, I was like in it. And so through this last few years, I've really thrived because I focused on energy, on my own energetic healing through all of this craziness that's been going on. So while there was chaos everywhere, I just had this little respite and this little place of peace where I just felt so good. Mm-hmm. And so that's what made me realize how important that energetic piece, at least for me, is to the wellness puzzle. And so it was this beautiful detour that I went on from the one-on-one coaching to this. And it was like, I could have never expected it or asked for anything this grand, but that's what made me realize. And then because I can see where in the health coaching space, there is a way for clients and practitioners to get so wrapped up in the data mm-hmm. that we might forget about that energetic piece. We are a body, but we're a spirit too. And it's like the two have to really complement each other. And so that's kind of how that journey came about for me. And that gave me those aha moments of this is so important. And because it's really cool, I walk the line of, I have all these friends that are health coaches, like a lot of the original founding members were on like a little chat. And then, so I have those people, and then I have like my Reiki practitioner friends. And it's kind of like really cool for me to blend the two together. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Because it's taking essentially like the two parts of like what make us like, here on earth. Like it's taking the energetic, it's taking like the spiritual, but it's taking mm-hmm. the physical and kind of combining it. And before we started recording, we were kind of just talking about how it's really hard to do one without the other, right?
Yeah.
You kind of rely on, whether it be crystals and, essential oils and kind of going in that direction. But if you're ignoring, your gut or heavy metal toxicity or eating inflammatory foods, you're only going to get so far over here. But if you're only paying attention to the physical and maybe even from an energetic place or a spiritual place, you're not even, I find so many clients don't actually have the capability to love or care enough for themselves to step into the work that it takes to kind of like get well. So if it's protocols or supplements, they're busy moms that are just like neglecting themselves, or they're in relationships that are, toxic and not serving them, it's hard for them to kind of like pull their focus to themselves and all of a sudden like do these protocols that are really healing when they kind of feel like they're not worthy, or when that's running in the background. They're not always aware of it. I can usually pick up on it, but it's so interesting how sometimes that can be such a limiting factor.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I always tell my clients and my friends, it's like energy doesn't lie. So when I go to work, I can tell those things are happening. Maybe their third eye is blocked and they're not getting those intuitive hits that come to so many of us. And it could be because of a heavy metal toxicity, or fluoride or whatever. We've got like something going in the heart chakra. They've got so many things that they're pushing out to the world. They're not maybe receiving, so it's really cool. I love how it all like intersects and complements each other, and I'm a Virgo sun. So that is very like data driven. I love to learn. One of my friends is like, if you want somebody to recommend you, the best supplements, the best diet, the best this, have some Virgo friends. And it was just like, oh yeah, that's pretty accurate. So I love that stuff too. I love the data, but I think you might be better off in some ways if you're taking care of your body first. Some people have an easier step because they're already noticing how that feels. They might not just be aware of like the more spiritual side of things. I think it's harder in some senses if you're only, in the higher realms to kind of bring that down and ground yourself too. But I think they both have their purposes and kind of ebbs and flows. But I feel like that's my mission and my passion is like, oh my gosh, it's so important,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a Pisces sun. So like, I'm always like, I'm more like emotional, and I'll be hesitant to recommend like protocols if the client starts crying and says they're stressed. I'm like, let's just work on stress first. Like we can do this stuff after. So and I love the data, but I'm also like always super in tune to kind of like the emotional process for clients too, which I think a lot of clients appreciate. And that, I think this is probably, again, no different with hairdressing, right? Like when somebody comes and sits in your chair and you're able to kind of like talk about their day, because there's just very few professionals and very few like interactions, quite frankly, in modern day society where anybody asks like, how are you? Or acknowledges like, it seems like this is hard for you, or gives any kind of like emotional anything, right? Like we're just all like, go, 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 go. And conventional medicine, while it's amazing in like life-saving situations and has its place, I think like falls short for sure on that bedside manner of just like not even asking the right questions, to kind of get to the bottom of things.
It's hard. I mean, it's just the system that it's like been kind of whittled down to at this point is very insurance based. It's like, get them in, get them out, get them in, get them out. So that's why my dad having his background, I really understand. And I have nothing to disparage against Western medicine, but I'm always like, for chronic illness, it's just not the best. It really isn't, so, and that's where I feel like Reiki has helped me, is I really am in tune with my body and what's going on. And if something's off, I notice it immediately. I don't just go, oh, it's fine. I'm like a detective, like, all right, what's going on? What's the latest? So.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious if you had someone who maybe it was a friend or maybe a client of yours or someone that kind of was new to Reiki. So if we have someone listening and they're like, I don't even know what Reiki is,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like what, if you had to kind of give like some sort of more like energetic, spiritual Reiki type of tip for kind of how it all plays into maybe the physical, like what would, and I don't want to use like the word dumb down, but what would be like a
Oh,
kind of simple explanation for people
yeah,
that maybe don't know the,
what it
the
is.
extent of it? Yeah,
Yeah. It's funny because when people ask me that, okay, I'm like, all right, explain the unexplainable. Let's
exactly.
go. Yeah. Because the best thing you can do is experience it,
Yes.
So because it's kind of like,
And that might be the tip.
yeah,
Like yeah.
I highly recommend it. There's a reason why you're hearing more about it. It's becoming more of a, I'd say even 10 years ago, people would be like, what is that? People have at least heard it now. Even if they still don't understand what it is, they've heard it. Basically, we all are energetic beings. Even if you're just looking at it from, biology or whatever, if you believe that like right now, I'm talking because my brain is sending electrical signals to my mouth and vocal cords and everything. So you obviously believe in energy, or else how would I be animating myself? So we have all this energy in our bodies, our meridians from Chinese medicine, our chakras, which are just energetic system, like little energetic wheels inside our bodies. And we have our aura, which is another big energetic part of our bodies. So as we grow and as we age and as we experience life, these traumas due to, emotional traumas, physical traumas, anything like that can get stuck in our bodies and in our energetic field. And so what Reiki does is it's actually energy from a higher source. It's not religious. It fits so nicely into if you are religious into anything, but it's just source energy comes in through as like me as being the conduit, flows through me out my hands. And it's really just a subtle energy. I can feel in your body if there's some blockages, some disruptions in that normal flow that's supposed to be there. And I typically start with people's aura because when disease, it's also energetic blockages. When that comes in, typically it starts in the aura. So we always make sure to keep that healthy first and then work towards the body. So most people report experiencing just a feeling of peace, calm, centered. They kind of float right out of my salon when they leave, and even from people that have never had it before, that are just like not knowing what to expect, they just feel like more centered, more grounded. And I have several people that I'm working with, like about a monthly basis is perfect, like once a month, just to keep moving in the right direction and keep your energy field like from getting those blockages and yeah, so that's kind of the best way to explain it, I guess. Yeah.
And I always say like, so I've seen someone forever who does acupuncture, she does Reiki, she does chakra, she's actually a shaman but does like chakra clearing. And everybody will be like, well, so like what does she do and like what and it's been actually over 12 years and I'm like, it's just, I am a completely different person when I leave.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I can hold it for a long time.
Yeah.
The longer I've done it, the longer I kind of stay in that centered place. But I always say, like, you take your car for an oil change, like you clear the tubes to like whatever the air conditioning vent and you do this and you do that, like that, then that's a car. There's a lot of other machines that need like tune-ups, right? Like you take your snowblower for a tune-up before the winter. I mean, our systems are no different in the sense that like they get bogged down with junk physically, like liver, blood, all of that, right? But also energetically. And I think so many times the energetic piece, right, can cause a lot of like the pain or the fatigue and the emotional type of stuff that also people are quick to think is, a physical manifestation, right? It
Yeah.
kind of works both ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's another way to support our system, right? That's so complicated, a way to support our system so that like, we're kind of like thwarting ourselves in the right direction, like as we're, showing up in the world.
100%. Yeah. I think it's so important. And I think people are more open to it. And I think they're looking for integrative health practitioners. They're looking for Reiki practitioners because they're finding the old system of a pill for every ill really doesn't sound so appealing at this point, and lucky me, it never sounded appealing to me. So I was super, I've just always been a rebel. And, when they told me, oh yeah, you're just going to have to take this for the rest of your life. I'm like, I don't think so. I'm going to figure something else out, but thank you. I appreciate you, but no, thanks. So I think I see it growing immensely because people are finding that, like you said, it's just going to be, I love getting massages too, but I honestly think I like Reiki even better. I see my friend, because I give myself Reiki, but giving yourself Reiki, I kind of equate it to like washing your own hair, right? Like it works, it's cool, it helps. But like when someone else does it, you're like, oh, so good.
Yeah.
So,
great analogy.
Yeah. So of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really cool, the space that I'm in, to help expand that and help, share that with the world. And also reminding people that they do have this temple, which is their body, to take care of. So that works even better. Like the Reiki works even better. Like I have one of my clients that does all the things, he's just into all the same stuff. And he experiences his Reiki that we perform. I mean, it's just like it's like next level. You know what I mean? Like the energy, he can just hold so much more energy because he eats healthy and he exercises and he meditates. So it really does shift the amount of light you're able to hold within your body as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably, I mean, there's just not that inflammation causing stagnation and overall just like retention. So that's super interesting too. And I think you kind of said like, people who, the pill for every ill, and, there's an alternative, but I also think that even for people who that sounds appealing at first, I think there's so many people now that are realizing like now what? I actually don't feel any better. And this was supposed to help. And now I'm just like on 3 things instead of 1. And a lot of people that come to us within, Equal Life, I mean, they've just had it and they've tried. It did sound appealing. They were like, okay, well, this will be the quick fix, right? Because medication can tend to be like that quick Band-Aid, but over time, they've realized like, I'm just treating one thing for the next symptom and nothing's actually resolving. And so I think people are becoming incredibly in tune to the fact that when there's other solutions, they tend to be a little bit, it's more work, right? Like you're taking on, I just saw a quote, and I can never remember quotes, but it was someone on Instagram, and she was talking about how like, basically the most courageous thing you can ever do is like take on kind of like that inner energy work, right? Because it brings up your past trauma. It brings up, and you don't have to have major traumatic, like actual memories for it to be hard, right? Like we all have some sort of trauma that we've gone through. And it's courageous work that takes a good amount of, consciousness and dedication. And so I think while it's harder work, it's so incredibly rewarding and beneficial. And I wish it was something that everybody could experience.
Yeah, I think I'm just happy to see people are more open to it. And that's something else too. I do work with people that are on medication, and, I come to them with love and understanding and like no judgment. You have to make your own choices. But a lot of times people are trying to wean off or get, they're working with their doctor to wean off their certain drugs and stuff. So I kind of can come in as a support system for that too. Well, I hold space for it. That is one thing that we're in Reiki, we're really try to well, with any kind of healing, like we're just a conduit for healing. Like I'm not healing anyone. I'm just a conduit to awaken your own inner healing. And that's same thing with integrative health practitioner. But I always want to make sure that people understand that, so they're not just like grabbing at us.
Which I love I love that differentiation because it puts the power back to the client.
Absolutely.
You're just whole. And again, we talk about this too, like you said, with an integrative health practitioner, I'm educating you and I'm giving you the empowerment to take your health into your own hands. And I'm holding the space for you to do that. And I'm giving you the education that you need to kind of go ahead and do that. But I'm no means, healing you or it then allows them to do the work, which is really the only way to kind of get the full benefit, right? Whether it's energetic work or physical work, because then it's yours. You get to own it. Yeah. You've come to that place on your own.
Yeah, exactly. And you're taking your power back. You're taking it away from the people that you're like, help me. And it's like, we're here to hold space for you, but just to help you help yourself. And that's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So if somebody was listening and they were like, oh, this sounds super interesting, as far as like the Reiki is concerned, because a lot of our listeners will be familiar with IHP. Do you have any books or social media accounts or podcasts that would be like more energetic based for maybe like an IHP who is interested in kind of learning more about this stuff? Any like resources?
Oh my gosh, I have so many books. I can't even tell you. Let me look at it's Reiki.org. That is what I'm that's the Reiki that I'm affiliated with. So that has a lot of books on it, just on their website. That like right off the bat, I could say that one is because I can look at my bookshelf. I have, I have psychic Reiki. I have the foundations of Reiki, you name it. I probably have it. Actually, I just got one called Medical Reiki. This one's with a nurse who practices Reiki. And so that's very interesting too. And just like there's hospitals around the country that have actually integrated like a Reiki into a hospital setting. So it's really cool that it's being more accepted. But my caveat to that is, let's not try so hard to be, I still want it to, we're trying to keep it free too, and keep it not under this like state certification. Cause that's a slippery slope to walk down. So,
with regulation.
So there's some great ones on there on Reiki.org. Okay. And I follow their Instagram, and my podcasts run the gamut. It is so funny because I listen to like Cabral Concept and Health Coach Success Stories. And then one of my favorite podcasts is The Mystical Arts. And he's like a numerologist and a mystic and Kabbalist, so, but very practical. Like I resonate with him because he's practical, like a practical magician, and he's kind of irreverent and funny too, so I'm trying to think if I have any other podcasts that mostly I read. So
those are
a lot of books.
That's great. And where can our listeners find you on social media, or websites, anywhere that you kind of show up?
My Instagram's probably like where I post the most, and that's Ascend with Jess is my Instagram handle. If I also have a website, it's ascensionaz.com. And the best way, like having some more offerings, I have a retreat coming in Sedona where I'm teaching level 1 Reiki. I separate it from level 2 because level 1 is all about your own self-healing. So you can become level 1 certified with no intent to become a practitioner. It's really just all about how to heal and help your own energy field, and know, how to start to pay attention and read subtle energy. Because I think that's what I think we all have the capability of it, but it's subtle. And so it takes practice and training to really pick up on that. So if you're interested in that, or my newsletter is also something I do once a month, and I give practical tips, energetic tips, breath work, my best digestive enzymes, I kind of have a little bit of everything in there. So it's ascensionaz.com /Instagram, and that will have all those pages for you to check out too. So if you want to get on my newsletter, that's probably the best way to hear about my latest offerings, my retreats I have coming up, and my one-on-one that's going to happen. Oh, I'm going to do quarterly detoxes with the nature's elements. So we're going to do the summer solstice, fall equinox, winter solstice, and spring equinox, because I really want people to realize they are nature. We are nature. And so it's nice to kind of go with her beautiful rhythms too.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool
Before
stuff.
we were emerged into modern day society, like that's what we were. We were just part of like, and everybody, kind of seems to forget that. And if we can kind of like remember where it is we actually like came from, it's, it makes me wish I lived in Arizona. I'm like, oh, this retreat sounds lovely.
Come visit. Yeah. I feel like it's going to be the first of many, because I'm already getting people that are like, when are you going to do this again? I'm like, can I do the first one first? And then I'll let you know when I'm going to do it again. So it's cool. People are really, and it's going to be in Sedona, which is like my favorite place. If you haven't been there, you got to visit at least once, because it's just healing, just being in those, like around those red rocks and the views. So yeah, it's going to be pretty cool for sure.
I have not been, but it's on my list. I can just tell from pictures, and I think like I'm totally like Southwestern at heart.
Yes.
In a sense. So it's on my list.
All right.
Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. It was such a pleasure getting to chat with you and have you share your wisdom with everybody. So I appreciate you being here.
Yes, it was such an honor. Thank you so much.
Yes, our pleasure. We'll talk soon, Jess. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.